Okay, so this is my Ferguson T20 with a Perkins P3 engine. So before I start, I am not a farmer or a mechanic. I bought this tractor just to do some work around my house. I thought I would make these videos to document any maintenance I done on it. Number one, to help me put the thing back together again when I dismantle it, and number two, to help anybody else that's having similar issues. So at the minute, the starter motor here is giving me a bit of bother. Everything was running fine one evening, and the next morning when it went to start, it seems to be seized. Maybe that's a short inside the engine, but I can actually turn the engine over by the fan here, and the engine does move freely enough. What's happening here is, if I go into start, this little switch closes. It puts power onto this solenoid here, which then puts power through the thicker cable onto the starter engine. Now this is, as there's no fuses or anything in here, this will start to smoke. So I'm not going to do it again now, but I've had the motor off and it turns freely. I've had it back on, and when I push the button in here, sometimes it does turn over, sometimes it doesn't. But it has to be engaged to the engine with this extra mechanical part that moves the gearing inside the starter motor into the gearing of the actual motor. So that's where we're starting from. I'm hoping to take this apart in the next few days and see if I can get it resolved on the bench really. So watch this space. Okay, so I have now taken the starter motor off the tractor. You can see in here the starting gear for the tractor that the motor engages with. Here's the motor sitting out. So whenever you go into S gear on here, which is the top right corner, that pushes this lever in, which makes this switch, and also pushes this gear out to engage with the motor gearing. So I'm pretty sure this is just a DC motor. Takes the 12 volts DC off the battery. Now I haven't got that much experience with DC motors, so I'm just going to take it into the bench and try to feel my way around what's actually going on inside to see if there's anything obvious as why it's not starting every time. Okay, so first thing I did was loosened and hit this band with a hammer to give it a bit of a knock. It's obvious that this thing hasn't been taken off in quite a while, because right on this side you can see that they've only managed to get paint on one side. So there seems to have been some sort of seal around here, maybe to keep this protected from the water. That seems to be pretty corroded, so I'm going to give that a bit of a clean up and see again if there's anything obvious there. But this looks not great. There's obviously been water got in here at some stage. Okay, so I've taken this band off now, taken off what seems to be the seal. It's in pretty bad condition. Inside here there are 4 carbon brushes that are connected by a spring onto the commutator of the DC motor. They all bail out using the meter to this point here, so there seems to be 12 volt going to all 4 of these brushes. I'm not quite sure how the 0 volts gets to the commutator of the DC motor, but I'll maybe find that out later. When I was bailing out the connection from this 12 volt terminal, which comes from the solenoid connection, was a bit difficult to get a reading on, so there's a bit of corrosion going on there, and hopefully if I dry this out for a while in the hot press and I clean up these terminals, get a better connection and replace the seal with new gasket paper, we can give her another try after that and see how it goes. To be continued. Okay, so a week later, I've left this in the hot press for a week. It seems as though it has dried out quite well inside. I've got new gasket paper here, so I'm going to make a new seal for around this part and this band to keep everything nice and tight. I've got new lugs and crimps, so I've also cleaned up the electrical connections, so hopefully that'll make a difference. So I'll put that back together and put it on the tractor, see how we go. Okay, so this is what I'm seeing. I'm just pushing the button in here now rather than going in the full on start. See, sometimes it starts. Actually that's every time. So we'll try and start. No, nothing seems to happen and start. Maybe the battery needs charged. TBC. So now I've got the battery connected up just to my car, just to give it a bit more voltage. Even when I try pushing the button in now, what I'm seeing is smoke. I don't know if you can see it or not, but smoke is coming from this terminal here, which is going into the starter motor. So I was kind of confident that that would have helped a little bit with the things I've done this past week, but it seems as though maybe the starter motor is actually seized. So we'll have to take another look at this again, see what we can do. Disconnecting the starter motor again, just on the bench, but going a wee bit further. So there's two bolts here, two big long bolts. They go right through this casing and connect this mechanism on, which is the starter mechanism. So you can see there's two little kind of shoes that fit into the starting gear. Whenever this is pushed in, this pulls this whole mechanism out and connects that little gearing in there into the gearing of the engine to start it. So actually whenever I started loosening these, this actually just popped off because of the tension on this spring. So I'm going to see it just and take a look inside and see if there's anything obvious as to why it's causing smoke. So a wee bit further, this is the top part of the motor physically when it's connected, and you can see that the windings in the stator on the lower end are not as good condition as the ones in the top end. So what probably has happened is quite a lot of water has got in and damaged these. I'm not sure if that's the reason, but it doesn't look great. Maybe a rewind is needed, but maybe a drying out of this in this condition in the hot press for another couple of days might help matters. I'll take another wee look deeper, see if there's anything else I can see. Okay, so I have now taken the rotor out. I looked at a couple of videos on YouTube that kind of showed how to test a rotor or an armature. I've checked the resistance across 180 degrees, so this pole to this pole, this pole to this pole, and I'm getting 0.1, 0.2 ohms right around, so that seems okay according to them. There's only 23 points on here. I would expect that to be an even number. I'm not really sure why that is, but you can see on here some of the resin that covers the windings seems to have degraded a bit and has actually disappeared there, so I actually get a short between this silvery part where the resin's disappeared to the actual winding end. Inside here, let me just get something to point with. These opposite brushes that have a little bit of extra insulation on there to insulate them from the actual casing of the motor. These are actually the 12 volt connections. these are the 0 volt connections, so they are at 90 degrees to each other really. The reason that I was getting 12 volts across all 4 brushes earlier was because it's pretty much a dead short through the winding, so I would get 12 volts coming right through the winding to the 0 volt connection of the brush.